So, a while back, I attended my school's grad night celebration, and you may have seen the dress I wore that night. Maybe you're thinking, where did she get that dress? Why does it look like she made it herself? And the answer is, well, because I did make it myself. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about that process. It all started with talk about grad night at the end of the year. I needed a dress, and so I got to thinking. Nice dresses can be pretty expensive, so buying one wasn't the best idea. And ordering one online can be quite risky because you don't know how it's going to fit or what the quality is like. Another option would be to make my own dress. Given that I've never made clothes in my life and I have minimal experience in sewing, this is obviously a great idea. Also, I was initially planning to wear this really cheap hoop skirt I got off the internet. If you saw the final dress, you know I didn't wear the hoop skirt. But to my knowledge, hoop skirts need skirts that are made specifically to fit them. If not, they won't fit. And that would mean I would either have to custom order one, it just sounds really expensive even without searching anything, or I could make my own skirt. So making my own dress was the strongest option I could think of. However, one problem is that I don't know how to operate a sewing machine, which would be a pretty simple obstacle to overcome, but I also don't own a sewing machine. Maybe you're saying, why not just borrow one and then ask the person you're borrowing it from to teach you how to use it? To which I say, no. I am too socially awkward to do that, and I would feel bad asking someone to lend me something and then asking them to teach me how to use the thing. And also to teach me how to make clothes. I had to make this journey alone, figuring out pattern pieces and hand sewing my way through it all. Apparently, I just really love to make things difficult for myself. I split the project into two main parts, making the bodice and the skirt. The bodice consisted of the main bustier bit and the sleeves, and the skirt consisted of, well, the skirt. So, armed with brown paper, a pencil, scissors, and the internet, I got to work drafting a pattern. I began with the bustier thingy. I tried one pattern that absolutely did not work for me for some reason, even though I followed the instructions exactly as I was supposed to. So I just scrapped that and found a new pattern and got to work with that. Then I started with the mock-up. This part is pretty boring, so I won't go into much detail, but basically I spent many hours over the span of many days hand sewing everything together, all while questioning my decision to make my own dress. But I was too far gone to go back on my word. I was stubborn and I would stick through it for fear of shame. So I've just finished sewing this. It's a bodice mock-up. Right now it's just a princess bodice, but eventually it's going to become a square neckline bodice with sleeves. Because to my knowledge, how you make a square neckline bodice like that is you make a strapless bodice and then sleeves, and you sew the sleeves on afterwards. Though I will say, looking at it now, I think the front panel is a little bit too narrow to do a proper square neckline, because if I were to start the sleeves here along the seam line, it's going to look a little bit strange, I think. It should start closer to your shoulder. Hi, so I cut out new pattern pieces for the front and the side panels. This is the new pattern piece for the front panel. Obviously it's not the whole thing, it's half because I cut the fabric out on the fold. I'm going to show you the changes I made. I'm wearing this so you can see the difference. It's very badly pinned again, so it's like falling. It's wider now, it's quite a bit wider. It's wider at the top and bottom. It's obviously with the top is about 4 cm wide on one side, so in total it's 8 cm. And instead of the sleeves starting here, like going up there and literally being in the crook of my neck, it's gonna be more towards here, where like my shoulder starts, which is where the collarbone ends. Yeah. At that point, I'd already spent a shit ton of time hand sewing the first mock-up, so I decided to just not make a second mock-up because that would take another like 10 years, and I just hoped that the pattern would work. Now, time to do a mock-up of the sleeves.
This is my progress on the puff sleeve so far. It's kind of a mess. It could do with some refinement, but what I've done so far is I pleated and hemmed the bottom, and I'm working on pleats on the top as well because I'm hoping that adding pleats at the top will help make the sleeve puffy at the top.
It was about time for me to start work on the actual dress, so I set out to find some nice and cheap fabric. If you didn't know, good fabric is usually pretty expensive, especially since this was my first time sewing. I didn't want to get super expensive fabric, but at the same time I didn't want to get like really cheap fabric, you know? So my choices were basically confined to the clearance section at Spotlight, and I found some pretty interesting fabrics there. There was this nice blue fabric with gold details that I would have gotten if not for the fact that it was really thick and fluffy and more suited for making a blanket. This shimmery sequin fabric that was reversible with stars on one side, which would have been pretty on theme but I didn't get for obvious reasons. This fabric with a helpful narration.
Space snakes.
This fabric that looked like ham. This Harry Potter fabric. This colourful fabric that said selfie time yay for whatever reason. I walked the clearance shelf like 20 times, but I didn't find anything that I liked apart from the ham fabric, but having run out of options, I decided to check a nearby shelf that had discounted fabrics just to see if I could find any relatively cheap fabrics, and I stumbled upon this fabric. It was synthetic satin. It was classy and didn't have a completely absurd price tag. Praying that I would be able to handle and sew this fabric, I bought some. At that point, it was mid-September, or exam season, and so I decided to set the dress aside for a little while so I wouldn't fail my exams. But I had a plan. Right after exams ended, I would cut out all my fabric pieces, borrow a sewing machine from my friend, and get to work immediately. However, I only had a 1-week window with the sewing machine, which was a slight issue, but that was the plan.
Okay, I thought the plan with the sewing machine was settled. I was just gonna borrow one from my friend for a week and rush all the sewing in that week and hope to the craft gods that I'll be able to finish sewing everything in that time. But in an interesting turn of events, something arrived in the mail today from Leanne. It's a tiny sewing machine. That's so convenient. I'm not sure why it never occurred to me to just get one of those from the beginning, because it's obviously a good idea because I'm making a dress, so a sewing machine would be useful, and a miniature sewing machine is going to be a lot cheaper than a regular sized one, and it's more convenient than borrowing one from my friend because I don't have to return it and I can use it anytime. And seeing how impulsive I am, I'm probably going to want to sew more things in the future, so owning a sewing machine is a useful idea. I'm currently in the midst of trying to figure out how to work the machine. I'm not doing a very good job of it because even though there is a manual, my comprehension skills have been severely compromised by exams. They've killed my brain. Nothing is going in my head, but that's okay, we'll figure out eventually.
I got to work soon after stumbling my way through the workings of the machine. I sewed and ironed a lot, made some mistakes.
I'm aware that I probably should have used black thread instead of white because my outer fabric is black, but I think it's fine. I guess the white does kind of go with the black, and at the very most I'll just look like I know nothing about sewing, and I do know nothing about sewing, so I guess it works out.
Procrastinated a lot and made very slow progress for a month.
It is currently 5th November, and if you can't tell, I'm kind of sick, but the progress I've made so far is I've basically finished sewing the bodice. Not a very good job because I didn't hide the raw edges and stuff, but you know what, it's fine, nobody's gonna see it, it's gonna be on the inside. And all I need to do for the bodice now is hem the edge of the back panels and add grommets and stuff for the corset back. So that leaves me with the sleeves and the skirt, which is basically everything else on the dress. I've actually started work on the sleeves, but by started work, I mean cut out the fabric for it, and I didn't even do a very good job of that. These are supposed to be rectangular, and as you can tell, it's not very rectangular. Mainly because satin is kind of difficult to work with, especially for a first timer, which I am, because it moves around so much, so it came out kind of wonky. And I have one piece for each sleeve, and they're not very identical either. So my plan is, when I have time over the next few days, I'm gonna iron these two pieces out on top of each other and trim them so that they are identical and rectangular, and then I'll just work from there.
My terrible inability to estimate things accurately also carried across to my time management.
Hi, it is the night of Sunday 6 November and I haven't done anything all day because I went out, so my progress on the dress is still the same as yesterday. But it's just occurred to me that grad night is in 1.5 weeks. I'm a bit worried about my ability to finish this dress on time because I am very prone to procrastination, which is the main reason why my progress is as such currently, because I keep putting off making the dress. I mean, if I really tried, I could probably finish the dress in like 1 or 2 days. But knowing me, I just hope that the impending deadline makes me more motivated to work on the dress instead of just constantly saying I'll do it later, because I won't.
It did. I ended up doing more work in the 1.5 weeks before grad night than I did in the entire 3 months before that.
I've installed the eyelets on the back of this bodice, and I'm currently using fabric edges as makeshift ribbon just to test the lace-up thing, and I'm happy to report that it does work. I think it looks pretty nice. I'm quite happy with the way it turned out. The front stays up for the most part, but I think it'll be fine when I add the sleeves. Now that I think about it, I don't think the back is exactly in compliance with the dress code that is no bareback dresses, but I'm not very sure what I'm supposed to do about that. I'm probably gonna add like a piece of fabric under here just so this part's covered. I'm not very sure what to do about the top though.
With the bustier bit done, I got to work on the sleeves, which was pretty straightforward, but given my sheer lack of intellect, I stressed over this far more than I needed to.
I am going crazy trying to figure out how to pleat this so that it'll fit my arm. I don't have measurements to follow because I did the mock-up by trial and error, and after I finish pleating, I'm gonna have to elasticate the whole thing, which is also stressing me out because I can't sew the elastic directly onto the fabric, which was what I wanted to do initially. I'm gonna have to do a channel for the elastic. I just hope it'll turn out fine. It has been a day since that last clip, and the problem I was trying to tackle then was that this pleat measurement means that the resulting armhole is still too big to fit my arm perfectly. But after an excruciating amount of thinking and trying to calculate a pleat measurement that would fit my arm perfectly, I've come to realize that this is in fact correct, because I need the armhole to be slightly bigger than my arm so that when I elasticate it, the elastic actually does something. Because if this armhole fits my arm perfectly and I put elastic, the elastic's not going to have anywhere to stretch to, which kind of defeats the entire purpose of the elastic. I'm not very sure why it took so long for me to come to this conclusion, but at least I figured it out. I don't know.
I also somehow encountered a few issues.
I'm almost done making the sleeves. I just have to add elastic to this end and then attach it to the bodice. But I have just now encountered a slight issue. They are supposed to be the same length. Why is this one so much longer than the other one? When I cut the fabric out, they were the exact same length, and I've been sewing them the exact same way, so I'm not very sure how this has happened. And I don't know what I should do now.
But I pulled through.
You know what? I think it's fine. I put the smaller one on top and then messed around with it until they look almost exactly the same. And I think I am just going to pretend this issue never happened and that everything is well.
Hi, it is 4 a.m. on Tuesday, basically 2 days before grad night, and I finally finished sewing the bodice. It's definitely a bit wonky and there are some minor fixes to be made when I wake up in the morning, but other than that, I think I did a pretty good job, especially considering this is the first article of clothing I've ever sewn. I'm quite happy with how it turned out.
Edging dangerously close to grad night, I finally finished one half of the dress. All that was left now was the skirt. I thought the skirt would be simple, but as it turns out, it was far more complicated than I had expected. But regardless, I was 2 days away from grad night and my skirt still needed to be made, so I just had to get back to work. I'd been planning the skirt for a few days now, getting the technical stuff out of the way so that the moment I finished the bodice, I could get to work on actually making the skirt. I think this rare display of effective time management is worth commending, so please comment and tell me I did a good job. Here's me using a wide variety of items like a tripod box as rulers to handle the fabric because I don't have a ruler long enough. I spent a long time deciding on whether or not to elasticate the waist, but in the end just settled for gathering the waist with a gather stitch instead. I initially did pretty narrow stitches.
I get this very interesting silhouette. It's not horrible, but I would prefer if the skirt didn't fall so straight and there was a bit more flare, but I'm not entirely sure how to do that. So I'm going to ask some internet people and see if I get any good answers by the morning that can help me and make this dress not look so strange. I've been informed that pretty much the only way to solve that issue is to use a petticoat. But the thing is, I don't own any petticoats, and the closest thing I have to a petticoat is this skirt. But as you can tell, it just goes straight down too. So that's not gonna do much. I don't know what to do. Yeah, that definitely doesn't do anything.
I thought that maybe wider pleats will make the fabric fall nicer, so I unstitched the first set of gather stitches and redid it.
I'm in an absolute state of chaos, but here's an update. This is what the skirt is like now. I have to sew this on and then close the ends, like sew these two ends together and then attach it to the bodice, and I'm pretty much done. So I hope I can finish this.
I was rapidly running out of time at that point, and I also had other responsibilities besides the dress, which left me with even less time.
It is currently technically the morning of, and the dress is almost done. But yesterday I lost my hand sewing needle, and I went and got another one, and I've just now gone and lost that also. It's not like the first time I've ever lost my needle, but this is the first time throughout the duration of this project that I've managed to lose 2 separate needles. By lost, I mean not being able to find it within 5 minutes of losing it. I've lost 2 needles in the span of 24 hours. It's amazing that I've managed to lose 2 needles right when I need a needle the most.
I stayed up till 4 am the night before grad night, hand sewing the skirt closed and then to the bodice. If you can see, I spent a notable amount of time trying to undo knots in the thread because I cut it longer than you're supposed to because I was too lazy to keep starting new threads. Not sure if that was a worthwhile decision given the amount of knots I had to deal with. I encountered some issues.
I lost my needle again.
And found proof of my handicrafting skills.
As you can see, I've done an amazing job with the eyelets.
But managed to finish sewing the dress at about 1:30 p.m.
Okay, so the dress is essentially done, but there is a slight issue that I foresaw, and then I spent a long time stressing over, but I couldn't think of a solution for it, so I just gave up and hoped that it wouldn't be a problem when I finished, but it is a problem. There is a lot of excess fabric for the skirt here that I need to be able to fit through the dress so that like this can pass my hips and then I just tighten it when it goes to my waist. But when I tighten it, this fabric's just there. I don't know what to do about it. I can't really elasticate it because I need to elasticate it all the way to like 5 cm or less, and then that's gonna be a bit hard to stretch to 35 cm, which is what it is currently. So I don't know what to do about that. It's just a flap of fabric here, and then I will rack my brain again.
I did rack my brain, but I couldn't think of any solutions, so I just decided to hope that it wouldn't cause any major issues while I was wearing the dress that night. I went out to get some ribbon to tie the back of the dress up, and that was it. The dress was finally done. If I'm gonna be honest, grad night was kinda boring. The only interesting things were Leanne dropping her certificate on stage, my dress, and the knowledge that however much effort everyone else had put into their outfits that night, no one could beat me. Me and the obscene amount of time and energy that had gone into making the dress I was wearing. Overall, I think this project was just one huge bad idea. Throughout the duration of it, I was genuinely very worried and stressed over whether or not I would be able to finish making the dress on time. In fact, I'm actually quite surprised that I managed to do it. The craft gods really blessed me. So, what did we learn from all of this? 1. I make poor decisions. 2. I made a dress all by myself like a big girl. And 3. If there's one thing I've learned from being in this school for 4 years, it's how to rush a project in the 1 week before it's due, even though I had months beforehand to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.